Oh, thanks so much for sharing your garden with us. Right now, we're going to be turning our attention to habitat gardens, but not the kind of habitat gardens we want. We're talking about critters that get from the garden into our homes and how we cope with that. And I'm joined now by Michael Shelley with a Wildlife Pro is the name of your business. Welcome to Central Texas Gardener.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. And now you have a particular philosophy, and that centers on prevention, right?
Right. We want to, when animals get in, the idea is we want to find how they're getting in.
Right.
We want to get up on the roof, do a thorough inspection of the roof, check those roof vents, check all those susceptible areas, and find how are they getting into the attic itself, and then we approach it from that angle. We seal off those holes, and then we trap them that way.
Okay.
But the idea is to prevent them from getting in the first place. So.
Well, always a good idea, I think. A lot of people would be comforted by the notion you can keep these critters from coming in. And what kind of critters are we talking about? There's a whole spectrum, right?
Yeah, I mean, the most common animals that I deal with are rats and squirrels, raccoons in attics. Here in Austin, we have ringtail cats. Those are the most common attic creatures. And then on the outside, we have armadillos and snakes as well. Yeah.
And possums.
Possums, of course. Yeah, can't forget the ugly old possum.
Now, I don't know if I would mind a ringtail cat. I've always wanted to see one, but all the rest forget.
They're great mousers. They really do keep the rodent population down. So.
Okay, well, there's some of these could be beneficial inhabitants of your home.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, so, when you talk about preventing them from getting in, and I've had a little experience with a garden shed that was getting infested with rats trying to get in, and it's being successful at it. And I looked and I looked and I looked, trying to find where they were getting it. And I finally found this tiny little seam of wood. And when I blocked it, it stopped the problem. I was shocked that they could move through that.
Yeah, they can really get through some tight spaces. People say a quarter-size hole is big enough. I've seen even smaller than that. But that's what they're designed for, just getting into some tight spaces and getting to the shelter that's on the other side.
They have rubber bones or something?
Quite flexible.
Quite flexible, apparently. Okay, so there's a lot of critters that do get in, and a lot of ways they can get in. Obviously, we're talking about holes at the size we're describing here. What kind of damage can these animals do? What, say, like a raccoon in the attic?
Well, a raccoon, is one of the most destructive. They can, when they're up there, they're walking through your insulation, so they're matting down the insulation and decreasing its effectiveness. They're defecating and urinating up there, which is causing biohazard. I've seen raccoons just tear open AC ducts so that they're getting that cool AC into the attic. And so, they can be really quite destructive.
Yeah, and of course everybody's familiar with mice in the kitchen or rats and things like that as well.
Yeah, if you're seeing droppings, in your pantry, a little stash of nuts or Doritos in the corner, you might suspect rats or mice.
Yeah, Doritos and salsa.
That's right. Yeah, having a little party.
Right. Okay. The blocking. We talked about prevention and blocking them up. Now, what do you use to plug the holes?
Standard materials in this line of work are mesh and foam. Sometimes I use sheet metal for larger repairs, but really it's simple stuff. Use a layer of wire mesh to create a barrier, and then I foam that over with black foam. It's fairly inconspicuous, and it's really quite effective. It just expands to fill those crevices, and it works really well.
And when I was protecting my garden shed, I put some screen down, and the guys chewed through it.
Right. So that's why we use the double foam and mesh. Because each on their own won't really cut it, but together they really do the trick.
Now, I live in an older building, and occasionally, some of my neighbors will complain that they hear things at night, kind of scurrying around. What are the telltale sounds or signs of some of these different critters?
Yeah, noises at night, scurrying, scratching, chewing. Some people describe just thumping, like the animal is scratching itself, like a dog would thump, thump, thump. So those are the noises that people report. Of course, in the middle of the night, when you're hearing something, even a small noise is going to sound a lot louder than it actually is. So, the sound of a rat might sound like the sound of a raccoon, but yeah, it's noises of any sort: scratching, running, thumping, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now that we've sealed up the house, let's say, there might be some of these critters still inside, right?
Right.
So that means that you need to trap or remove them. So let's talk about the right things to do there.
Trapping, you do want to use traps. You don't want to use poison. You don't want to use sticky traps. Personally, I do use the lethal snap traps. These are humane in the sense that they do the deed quickly. And so that's what I would recommend. I don't recommend poison at all. I don't recommend the sticky traps because it's a slow death, and they're not. If you're not addressing the entry points, new animals are just going to keep on coming in. And
the poisons, of course, are really inhumane.
Inhumane to not just the animals, because it really is a slow, prolonged death, and the death often occurs in the house.
Yeah.
Then you have to call someone like myself out to find this stinking corpse. But not only that, but say an owl comes along and eats this sick rat, that owl's going to get sick as well. So it goes right up the food chain. So avoid poison at all costs.
Okay. And if you're trapping, don't relocate, right?
Well, it's depends on your neighbors, I guess. But I prefer live trapping and bringing them far, far outside of town. And it's better than the alternative of.
Yeah. Well, animals, when they're inside, and this is one thing that I've heard, is they'll get desperate, and they'll eat just about anything, right? And
certainly.
So what are some? Let's talk about the kinds of things you've seen on that front, and then what are some strategies to keep them from doing that?
Right. Well, if they're hungry, they're going to go for anything. I've seen them eating cardboard. I've seen them eating laundry detergent. Certainly they prefer real food, just like anyone else. But the prevention of them eating that is keep them from getting in the first place. You want to keep them from getting into the house, keep them, find those entry points and seal them off and get them out.
But but for example, putting things in a plastic container,
Sure.
they'll eat through plastic.
Right. Very often, people will keep their dog food out in the garage in a big plastic bin, and they're surprised to see that rats have chewed right through that. So yeah, it's no match for the rodent. But yeah, metal containers, and again, go back to see how they're getting in, and then close off those areas.
All right. Well, obviously, this is a problem that happens all over town.
All across town.
It's not relegated. People like to think this. No, my house could never be affected, but
no. Regardless of the age of the house, brand new or antique, or the neighborhood, it's these animals are in a symbiotic relationship with humans, and they go where we go. And it's just part of life in the urban environment.
Well, part of life we would rather avoid, and you've had some great tips, so we really do appreciate you coming on board. And again, we all are for habitat, but not in our attics.
Not in the attic.
Not in the attic. All
I
right.
agree with you.
All right. Well, thank you so much
Thank you, Tom.
for being a part of the show. And
My
coming
pleasure.
up next is our friend Daphne.